If you're planning on being an entrepreneur or if you already are one, there's something important you need to understand. Your relationship with failure will heavily define how fast or slow you grow as an entrepreneur and whether or not you'll be able to go the actual distance. I'm making this video because a lot of people come to me saying that they are burnt out and they want to know how I have personally dealt with burnout over the last 8 years pretty much of trying to start different businesses. And after putting hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own money into businesses that I've tried to bootstrap that have failed, wasting 8 years of my life trying to build startups, I think I figured out how I should deal with burnout and how I deal with failure. And I think once you find that relationship, it'll greatly reduce the amount of stress you have while working on your startup and also expedite your roadmap to success because you will have such a healthier relationship with failure to the point where you are growing a lot more because it doesn't take a mental toll on you. And yeah, the first thing that really helped me understand and deal with failure was the idea that you can't really grow without it. And also, I think burnout comes from a couple different sources. First of all, I think if you are overworking yourself and you are not sort of refreshing and allowing yourself to recharge, that could be sort of a point of burnout. But also, if you are just facing failure over and over again, and psychologically, it's just hard for you to carry all the overwhelming mental stress that running a startup might come with, you can easily burn out as well, even if you're not doing that much work every single day. And that could be sort of counterintuitive. I know for me, I felt like it was psychologically tricky to deal with since a lot of people talk about burnout when they're working 80 to 120 hours a week. Yet sometimes if I only worked 25 hours that week, I would still feel that feeling of burnt outness and not wanting to push forward because I'm just so tired of doing it. And really one of the biggest things that it came down to for me was my relationship with failure and how I look at failure. Like I mentioned, I have failed a lot over the past 8 years. I think I've eaten shit over and over and over and over and over again. And it has just been an insane experience that I don't think anyone that has a regular career path that isn't related to entrepreneurship really has to deal with. And that's why a lot of the times I feel like people don't really talk about it or mention it a lot. But your job as a founder is essentially to just continuously fail and hit a wall and hit a wall and fail over and over and over again until you find one little thing that works right. And that's sort of the flow. And if you are a founder, you probably know that people's perception from the outside in of being a founder is pretty skewed. A lot of people think that founding a company means you come up with this great idea, a master plan to execute on it, and you do it for 2 years and your idea eventually comes to fruition. When in reality, it's not like that at all. These aren't just genius plans people are coming up with. In fact, a lot of the times when somebody starts a company, they have no idea what they're doing. And people that are successful at running companies still have no idea what they're doing it. In fact, most of the times people are winging it from beginning to the end. The only difference is the people that have been doing it for a while and get farther than most people are just more comfortable with failing and being wrong. The whole idea is every time you think of an idea or have some sort of proposition for your business to follow, you are essentially creating a hypothesis. And what you do is you want to validate that hypothesis as fast as humanly possible. The only way to do that is to act on that hypothesis, get real feedback from the market, and determine whether or not your hypothesis was successful or not. If not, you adopt strategies. When you look at the process in more of an objective way, you start to detach your sort of ego and who you are from the assumptions that you are making. You have to understand that we are like scientists of the business world. We are just trying things out and making hypotheses and testing them over and over again to see what is actually true in the real world. One thing I used to do a lot was base how successful I was as a founder by the quality of my quote genius ideas and whether or not they would turn out to be true. But that's not really how being a founder works, number one. And number two, if you continue to do that, you're going to be personally invested and sort of subjectively aligned to what you are suggesting to the point where you don't have an unbiased perspective and you might lead the direction of the business in the wrong way. Not only that, but you get emotionally caught up when things don't go your way, even though you're the one that started steering the company in that way in the first place. Now, let's say you've gotten to the point where you are burnt out and you don't really know what you should do and you don't want to work on the business and you're just at an all-time low. Well, first of all, when I was in those positions, having a co-founder was a tremendous help because I could lean on them. And a lot of the times it's rare for both of your sort of troughs in mood changes to coincide with each other. So if I was at an emotional low, my co-founder might have been at a high and vice versa. But if you don't have a co-founder, sometimes you need to just take a step back and sort of gather your thoughts and get clear perspective on what it is that you are actually doing. Think about why you're doing what you're doing, why you started it in the first place, and where objectively you actually are in the process. A lot of the times we don't see success until eating a lot of failure, and you could be on the precipice of succeeding, but you just don't know it. Focus more on what you have learned and the growth that you have undergone undertaken and what you can use from all those learnings and growths to actually propel your business forward, as opposed to thinking about how many things have gone wrong. A quote that can help me through these moments is, "With each failure comes an equal or greater seed of success." I believe it's something like that. But essentially, if you are failing at something in business or in life, it is because you still have something to learn before you can overcome that thing. So ask yourself, if you are stuck or you are at a wall, what is the lesson that you are just not learning quite yet that you can bring to yourself to overcome the issues that you're facing? That, paired with some time off away from the situation, can really help. A lot of the times I find that when I take my mind off the thing that is causing me a lot of anxiety or stress or overwhelmingness, that it can solve itself in my mind within a day or two of not thinking about it and focusing on something else. It's sort of like when you're coding and you can't figure out a bug, then you go to bed and you wake up the next morning and all of a sudden the thing that you spent 8 hours trying to solve, you can solve in 5 minutes. And that leads me to the biggest thing that helped me deal with burning out, and that is the idea of realizing that it's a marathon and not a sprint. A lot of people online or on Reddit love to talk about working 12, 14, 16 hours a day to try and get their business off the ground, and that they don't care about work-life balance or anything like that. But in my personal experience, I found if I work 4 hours dedicated throughout the day, I can get X amount done. Yet if I try to force myself to work 16 hours a day, I find that those 16 hours a day aren't as nearly as effective as those initial 4 hours, so I still probably get around X amount done. And not just that, but if I'm working 16 hours a day, I also neglect things like my health and my mental health, which leads me to be more and more efficient as time goes on. So instead of spending 4 hours to get X amount done, I might spend 16 hours over a course of a month and maybe end up getting X minus like 0.3% done or something. And it just slowly increases like that. Everyone has their own way of working, and some things work for you that might not work for others. So I recommend finding out what works for you. What situations are you the most productive, and really try to quantify how much work you do if you do a small amount of 2 hours of focus work versus trying to force yourself and sit there and work for 12 hours, and really try to see and compare how much you're actually able to do if you do both of those for maybe 2 weeks at a time. And yeah, I hope this really helps you. A lot of the times the advice that people give in these videos are really polarizing or sort of black and white, but the solution really lies with what works for you. And I've just given some examples of what worked for me in the past. And if you found value, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment. It helps a lot with the algorithm, and feel free to join our Tech Founder Discord. The link is in the description below. And we pretty much have a whole community of people that are also trying to start a company just like you. So it doesn't feel as isolated. You can talk and figure out, what your problems are and see what other people are struggling with as well. And I'll see you guys in the next video.